And good morning, everybody. Welcome to FSU Coach Live. My name is Tim Backhurst, and I'm joined this morning by Tim Rice, Dr. Tim Rice, who has a plethora of experiences, not only as a coach, but also as a professor of coaching. So, Tim, rather than me try to explain all of the things that you've done and where you are now, if you wouldn't mind, just share a little bit of your experiences and where you are today, and then we'll get into some questions.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, Tim. I really do appreciate it. I am actually originally from the small town of Robertsdale, Alabama, on the Alabama Gulf Coast. I've done this for over 30 years in some way, shape, or form, from the time I was a college student assistant at Enterprise State Junior College all the way till now. 32 years of experience, and I've just been, very fortunate to meet many people, to coach a lot of different sports at different levels in different parts of the United States and in Europe. And so I'm really fortunate. I think that that's the thing that I always bring up. Not everybody gets a chance to do what I do. And I'm the product of a lot of hard work and a lot of blessing, I think.
Now, you're wearing a Basketball Ireland shirt. So if you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about what you're doing, because I know you're a professor, but you also work in the basketball world. So Sure. What is it that you actually do as part of your day-to-day responsibilities?
Well, with Basketball Ireland, I was fortunate in 2015 to make my first trip to Ireland. I have a very good friend in Ireland by the name of Kieran Murphy, mentor to me. He actually gave me my very first team at a summer camp in New York State in 1991. And he invited my wife, Candy, and I over for a 20th anniversary trip, actually, 5 years ago. And we had never been. We'd heard a lot about it, but we didn't really know what it was all about. Of course, when we got there, we learned how incredibly important the place is. It's really in our hearts every single day. And every day that we have a chance to impact the game, we try to, of course. But during that time, I was fortunate to work. And we also spent almost a year there after our trip. We actually came back from the United States to Ireland and worked at St. Mary's College in Galway, Ireland, which is a Catholic high school, boys' high school there. And during that time, I got involved with Basketball Ireland, did a little bit of work with basically an overview of their overall program there, and then was given a chance to be involved with the Elite Performance Committee, which is the committee that is basically governing committee over all of the national teams from under 16 up to senior men and women. And we also have governance over the academy structure and help bring in the coaches, evaluate coaches in the programs. So I do that. I have done a lot of work with clubs over in Ireland, and basically I speak with somebody from Ireland almost every day, whether that's on WhatsApp, email, Zoom, you name it. And, I've also done a lot of scouting work for all the teams when they play in the European Championships every summer, done an analytics project for the program over the last 6 years, looking at analytical trends in terms of performance, and, just basically try to hold the ladder and try to help people climb to greater success and heights. And that's something that is very important to me.
Now, I'm from England. You've obviously been in Ireland and working with the Irish team. And when I was in England, one of the colleges I taught with had a developmental basketball program. And I taught some of those students in college. And of course, all of them thought that they were going to be NBA superstars and maybe didn't appreciate the standard in the U.S. and the high expectations that exist for getting into college in the U.S. and becoming professional. How do you translate kind of what exists in the U.S. and how do you develop it into an Irish program that may not have the resources and may not just have the numbers of people who are just playing the sport How do you do that in order to make a international team competitive?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, first and foremost, you have to have coaches who love the game and love the people that are on the teams, who want to learn about the game in all aspects, whether that's the science of coaching or, the psychology of coaching, of course, and being able to understand best practices in coaching, especially on the basketball side. For me, what I bring to the table, I don't claim to be all knowing about the sport, but, I bring a lot of experience that I've gained through the years from some great mentors over the last 30 plus years. And, one of the things that a lot of the Irish young people, for instance, there's a kind of a renaissance in basketball right now in Ireland, with players that are the national leagues are growing in strength. And, they're better than they've been since the glory days in basketball there in the 80s and early 90s, when Americans first arrived on the shores there to play in the National League system. A lot of the players in Ireland that are in school system there and the clubs are starting to make their way to the United States, and they're making their way to get chances to play in prep schools and colleges. And we have a large number of players from the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland now that are coming to the United States. So it's been, I think from where I stand, my goal is to bring in technology ideas, utilizing Huddle or Synergy or, systems like that to help with scouting and evaluation of players, helping players understand how, a certain team plays, or being able to understand how they play individually. Bringing in the sports psychology piece is a big part of what I do as well. Trying to also bring in different ideas and helping the program over there really. And as you know, Tim, Ireland is a country that loves the Gaelic sports that they offer in GAA. And, for those people watching that aren't Irish, of course, the GAA is a very historic athletic association for the sports of hurling, Gaelic football, and handball. And so being able to have basketball is growing in very importance and popularity. It's the most popular indoor sport in the country right now. And on the island. So, I think that being able to bring in different ideas, such as the junior MBA and getting that up and going, I think everyone has just kind of banded together and done such a wonderful job. And we have some incredible volunteers, and, the funding isn't the same as it is in the United States, obviously, but the love of the game certainly is no less over there, that's for certain.
Well, and if you're just joining us, we're talking with Dr. Tim Rice. If you have questions for him, you want to know a little more about a specific topic, just put it in your chat box and we'll get it to him. Before we started the show, we were talking about evidence-based coaching and understanding that coaching is a science. It's important to have that knowledge and that expertise. Not everybody has that. And we've talked about it being a huge problem in the US where coaches are observing another coach, therefore this is what I do because that's what they do and they won, or this is how I was as an athlete. This is what my coach did, therefore that's what I should do. And yet a lot of coaches don't necessarily have the why to understand why are you doing what you're doing. Talk a little bit about the importance of that, because it's something that I think a lot of coaches are missing out on.
Yeah, well, yes, that's true. I think one of the challenges here in the United States that we have is, that's one thing that I found so fascinating about being in Ireland and in Europe in general was the emphasis of certification. You see it north of us in Canada too. The certification system here is pretty much, I'm not going to say it's completely void, but, not every sport is going to have the same viewpoint on it. For me, for instance, becoming a college head coach, high school head coach. Wasn't required to have a certification from
Right.
specific, governing body in the sport. So that's something there are a lot of people that kind of just show up and, maybe have a great heart to do what they're doing. But I've made a lot of mistakes in my past, a whole lot. And I think that as I've grown older, I've learned a lot from my own mistakes, but also being able to dig into the peer-reviewed research, the stuff that's out there, whether it's on athlete burnout, whether it's on psychological issues, whether it's on leadership, physiological things, being able to reach my players and in the best way. And, that's the thing that I wish more coaches would do here in the United States, is really dig into what the research shows.
I would argue, sorry to interrupt, but I would argue as well that a lot of coaches have not been taught how to do that, right? And so, you need to go read research articles, but I don't understand anything about statistics. I don't know what these numbers mean. I don't know how this applies to me. There's definitely an argument there, and not trying to promote my own certificate. Hey, why not? We're talking about it. But there's definitely an argument there that coaches need to be taught how to use this information beyond just, well, I just went on Wikipedia or I did a Google search and I found some coach who said this.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. And I don't think there's anything wrong with promoting your program, by the way. I do think that education is such a critical piece to success. For me, I was fortunate to earn my master's and doctoral degrees at the United States Sports Academy in Daphne, Alabama, and has a long-standing history of educational, really just success in terms of getting folks that are in the coaching profession or in the teaching profession the opportunity to get their degrees from distance. And for me, I had that opportunity and it made a huge difference for me. But I also think that it's something that has to be important to the person, right? I mean, we do need to teach folks that are in this business to really dig into those areas. And I know a lot of people, even the students I teach, whether they're doctoral students, graduate students, undergrads, they get scared to death of research staff. I'm sure you have the same thing. And I think that we're starting to see a lot more practical research studies that are coming out that I think coaches have more of an interest in reading because it's not confusing to them. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but it's something that I'm starting to see a lot more, especially in my.
Yeah, definitely. For those who have not gone on to get any kind of graduate work done, whether it be a certificate or a master's or something, it's a fear factor to some extent of this looks scary, therefore I'm not going to go that way. So there's definitely an opportunity for more applied research, especially for those who, the high school coach who just tell me what I need to know. And to some extent, that's where people like you can come in to have a role within a sports organization, because maybe the organization doesn't have that person who says, okay, here's the information, here's how you apply it. That's the role or the value that you have coming in, because that's what you do.
Right. Well, but I think that but also being able to communicate to coaches, for instance, what the research says. For me, a great example, I did my very first analytical research with the Irish national teams after the summer of 2016. Mm-hmm. And I had an opportunity that November in Dublin to meet with all the national team coaches over a dinner, and I presented the analytics report and explained it. And there were a lot of folks that understood and some that didn't, but ultimately they got a taste of what it was. And we've been seeing that a lot more people are becoming more interested in that, whether that's in Ireland or here in the United States with people that I work with. I think that's being able to explain it. I'll bring some South Alabama wording. I'm kind of like a splainer. to people. I think being able to do that is helpful for coaches to have somebody like that.
Yeah. Now, I watched a presentation you made a few weeks ago, and this is kind of what instigated that. I want to talk to this guy. One of the things that you talked heavily about was just the role of having a mentor or good coaches in your experiences, and then also developing your own coaching philosophy. And I think
Sure.
perhaps they're two different things, but they very much align. When you've had good mentorship, when you've had good education and teaching, it allows you to develop a philosophy that can be very effective. Can you talk a little bit about your experiences having a mentor and now being a mentor, and then a little bit about what your coaching philosophy is and how you developed it?
Sure. Well, yes. I mean, mentorship in general is such an incredible, powerful way to actually impact sport and impact the world, really. When I look at the people that mentored me all the way back to when I was in high school as an athlete, whether it was, my high school coaches to my first college coach that I work with, Sid Elliott at Enterprise State Junior College in Enterprise, Alabama, or Bill Elder at Mobile College, where I went to school for college, or all the other people, Steve Lamy at Grove City College, or Harry Sheehy at Williams College. A lot of people have really impacted my life to be able to help others through the sport grow and climb the ladders to success. I've talked a lot about holding a ladder for others. It's weird to have had someone who mentored me, and now I'm mentoring others. I think that's, I don't know where all the last 30 years went, because I was once a young man. Now I'm basically less than 2.5 weeks from turning 50. And it's weird to be in the mentoring role, but I feel very fortunate to be in that role. Now, as far as philosophy is concerned, when you work with head coaches that have won nearly 3,000 games in their career collectively, you get a chance to see a lot of good things. And you see things that, you can take some good things that you like from each coach. You can say, yeah, I'm not very, interested in this part or that part. And you kind of become collaborate. You're kind of a person that's collected so many things through the years. And of course, for me, I've been fortunate to have that experience and have those mentors. But a mentor's a guide, period. I was speaking with some students in an online class in a learning activity just the other day about mentorship. And, just trying to make sure people understand that mentoring isn't something that you just do when you're my age. You can do it when you're a young coach. You can do it as a coach that's just right out of college, who's been doing it for 3 years. Maybe you have a new coach come in, you can mentor them. But my philosophy, and as far as developing the philosophy, a lot of the things I've gotten through years, but a lot of it I got from Steve Lamy at Grove City in Pennsylvania. And, my philosophy is really based on executing the fundamentals and teamwork. And as far as basketball is concerned, defensive pride. That's a really big thing. I'm a big defensive coach. But being able to have things like the basketball code, which you had a chance to watch me talk about, help provide a blueprint for your program, where there's standards, they're not rules. And I think a lot of times people, when they think of rules, they think negatively. I look at standards. I look at things that are going to impact these people, the athlete's world and the coach's world after they're done. Because I know I use the basketball code every day in my life by being, I know I can't run everywhere, run on off the court in my real world, but I can. I can be, accepting nothing less than my best effort, the best effort for my teammates and myself. I can do that every day. and giving my very best effort. And I think that's very important. So, I mean, I think learning from those coaches through the years and others that I've worked with that have been athletic directors, people like Kieran Murphy over in Galway, Ireland, the Mike Lynch's, he's a national coach over in Ireland, and I can learn something new from everyone. I think that's the thing that, a lot of times people think that just because they don't have as much experience, well, you can't learn anything from me. I've learned, I learned a lot from my players, as 18 to 22-year-olds. And, I think that's something that a lot of times people don't think about. I think that they think they know so much, but man, I didn't really learn a lot until I turned 36 years old. And then I really gained a lot.
We have a question coming in, and it's from Steve Pruitt. He's a coach educator himself. He says, what resources do you use to assist players from out of the country to acclimate to the culture of their new team, city, and area? This can be U.S. players to Ireland or vice versa.
Well, that's a good question, Steve. One of the things for a lot of the National League teams in Ireland that recruit Americans to come over. And by the way, for anyone that's watching that might be a college coach or someone who has juniors or seniors in college, there's a program in the Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland. It's called Sport Changes Life. And Sport Changes Life, you can reach out to me and I can send you that information. It's a program where athletes from the United States that have finished their college eligibility and earned their bachelor's degree can go to the Republic of Ireland or Northern Ireland and get their master's degree and play National League basketball for one of the teams in the National League, and also work with local teams and also clubs within their area wherever they're based. But I think that a lot of the players that have come from the United States to Ireland, are basically taken in by other Americans a lot of times. I think that because we live in a, if you were to ask the question, Steve, back to the 80s when the first Americans arrived on the shores of Ireland, I'm sure that there are definitely stories about those players and the shock, the culture shock that they faced. And now it's obviously because of our world being so connected to computers and World Wide Web and everything else. It's not as challenging as you might think. In fact, Ireland itself is very Westernized, of course. I always felt like it was like the 51st state in many ways. There are differences, obviously, and the cultural differences. But, I always felt welcome there. I feel welcome there every time. I love the place. And I'm fortunate to have many, many great friends there. Some of my best friends in the world.
If you wouldn't mind, talk a little bit about some of the challenges that the coaches face in not just basketball, but in general. I mean, we've talked about the importance of evidence-based coaching and making sure you know why you're doing what you do. But there are many other challenges too, whether it be coaching in a different country, which even though it may be similar, there's still differences and different nuances, but also working with different age groups as well, which is something that have experience doing. Can you address some of the challenges that coaches face in today's society? Yes.
Well, I would say, if we're talking about Ireland, there are a lot of differences there compared to the United States. We have so much more time to work with our players here. Ireland, most teams are going to practice that. When I was working with teams, I would, at St. Mary's College in Galway, I would work all 5 days each week and sometimes 6 days. But I would have a team 2 days a week, an hour and 15 minutes each time. And I was used to, when I went over there, I was used to having a practice 2 hours a day with the same team 5-6 days a week. And, it's definitely a difference over there. But I think that if we're talking about a generalized approach to what basketball coaches face, I mean, I think bottom line is, every basketball coach that I've talked to, whether it's in Ireland, United States, whatever, always wants more help, more staffing, more ability to, see the court more and be able to be all over the court to be able to help their players, not just be by themselves on the court. I know that if you were to ask anyone that's worked with me in the past, I'm very high energy. I'm running all over the place, and I'm very loud, and I speak a lot when I'm teaching. But one of the things is that I would love to have 2-3 assistant coaches that I can say, okay, you're covering this and you're covering that, and then I can float. So I think that a lot of coaches would like to have more assistant help or assistants when they're in practice. I think the administrative side, a lot of times people think that coaching is just the glamour and glitz of putting on your suit and tie, especially here in the United States, putting your suit and tie on, or, if you're getting just, nice and dressed appropriately as a coach would here, to coach the game. Well, the game is only part of what a coach does. The administrative side is such a big part of being a coach, and it doesn't matter where you're at. For me, I know that it was something that I thought I did a pretty good job of, and still do when I coach a team. And also in my role as the academic program director of the PsyD program at Ashford University, I'm big in trying to focus on all the little intricacies and the bits and pieces that I have to make the car drive down the road. I think that that's one thing that coaches, wherever you go, need help with and need assistance with, human resource assistance.
We've got a question coming in, and I'm going to preface it by just kind of explaining to those not familiar that European programs are typically clubs, where you play for your club, not necessarily your school, not necessarily for your college. And even colleges have clubs. They don't have NCAA teams specifically. So Jake Von Scherer says, do you see the American system of high school sports moving toward the European system of clubs within the next several years? It's a good question.
Well, I think that it's been moving that direction for a long time in a lot of ways. Jake, that's a good question. One of the things about this, one of the things that I found very interesting when I got to Ireland was that club basketball was way more important than schools basketball. And I was just perplexed by that. I didn't understand it as an American, right? And I know that they get a lot more games in their clubs than they do in the schools. Some of the high school kids in Ireland are, the over 19 kids, because everything's in age groups over there. The over 19 kids, basically the senior high kids, if they don't win in the first semester, they don't go forward to the national playoffs in the second semester. And so their season can be completely finished. And then we go into second semester over there with, first year basketball, second year basketball, basically under 15 and some under 16, some. But to answer your question, Jake, no, I think it is heading in that direction with the AAU structure. I think that you're still a few more years away than what the European system's like. And I think the reason why it's that way, Jake, is because of the over there compared to over here, they don't have seasons. For over here, we've got sports for the fall, winter, and spring. That was one of the big things that was an adjustment for me going into Ireland, is that, they're playing sports all year long. So basketball gets started really, really early and goes throughout. And that's a major difference. So I would say it's probably a few more years off than you might think.
If you look at club sports, though, in Europe, and I was a participant of those as well, one of the dangers maybe of going to a club sport model over a high school sport model is sport specialization.
Right.
That, I worked in a college where kids were put into, I preface college is not the same term in the United Kingdom and Ireland as it is in the US. But, kids were coming in at 15 and they were specializing in that sport, and that's all you do, and you do it day in, day out, day in, day out, all year round, as you talked about. Danger of maybe sports specialization leading to injury, burnout, and so on. I think there's something worth discussing in that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that the research is pretty clear on that we have here in the United States, especially that burnout or specialization itself, early specialization doesn't necessarily lead to success down the road. And Urban Meyer has talked about it. When he was at Ohio State, he had some things he talked about, that some of his best athletes at Ohio State were 2 and 3 sport athletes. So they played lots of different sports. I would say that when you look at the European model, there are obviously in Europe a lot more sports academies, and we're starting to see schools like Spire Institute and IMG Academy, opening up and getting very heavily involved in how things go here, as far as folks that want to be heavily involved in specializing in a sport. But a lot of kids, I know some of my best athletes at St. Mary's College there in Galway played, Gaelic football, they played hurling, they played basketball, they played soccer, some of them played rugby. So they had a lot of things going. But I agree. I think that the research is pretty clear on that as far as burnout is concerned. And it really doesn't, I think the thing is, if we're going to be commonsensical, if you will, if you're going to specialize at such an early age, and then you don't get something out of it, let's just think about the implications for that down the road. The disappointment down the road if you don't meet that expectation that everyone else has. I think that athletes need to have a viewpoint of why they're playing too. Just as, if not more so than coaches understanding why they coach. I think that those are both things. And I would even, we could talk for another 30 minutes about coach burnout. I won't get into that. But, I think that anytime that you overdo something, there's a possibility you can really hurt yourself. And it's something that isn't a fun thing.
You talked a little bit at the beginning about analytics and kind of the value you bring and the technology that's important in any sport, let alone basketball. At the same time, there has to be a balance between using analytics and overusing analytics and understanding rhythm and momentum and some of the intangibles that happen with athletes. How do you balance sport analytics in a team such as Ireland, where you've talked about the fact that there may not be the resources to have 5 coaches and one's responsible for the analytics? You've got one coach, they have to do everything, but now you're adding on this kind of technological requirement or necessity. How do you balance that and understand that, hey, this is a tool, but it's not the be all and end all, and you can't live or die by this?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. Well, I would say that, I think we can take something from everything, right? That analytics, I think that any time that we focus on any one specific area so much that there's a potential that you're going to, let things slide on other areas. For me, what I try to do when I'm presenting the analytics side to the coaches over there is do my best to explain kind of what they mean. I'd like to do more of that going forward to help them understand, like for instance, understanding possession count, how many possessions they have in the ball game, and their offensive and defensive efficiency. Every coach, I think, wants to understand if they're being efficient each time they have the basketball, or the amount of times they're getting to the free throw line in comparison to their overall shots taken. These are things that don't have to be ridiculously confusing, but there are different measures to look at that can impact success if it's looked at in a way that is, well, and it has to be explained a lot of times. And, we certainly don't think that every coach is going to be, the analytics whiz kid or anything. I'm a kid who, I'm certainly not a math guy, but I'm someone that understands how it can impact. So I would say that ultimately it's about a balance. Being balanced in anything you do in coaching is extremely important, but taking things, little bits and pieces that can impact what you're doing to help be successful. And, whether that's working on a sports psychology aspect with your team, Positive Coaching Alliance, which is an organization in the United States, is really big on really helping people understand, and they have great tools for coaches that, don't need to be experts in sports psychology, for instance, but ways that they can reach their players, ways that they can reach their parents. There are all sorts of different tools you can use, and analytics is one of them.
Now, looking, and by the way, we're watching Dr. Tim Rice talk about basketball and coaching. If you have questions, now is your chance, because I only have a couple more. So get them in if you have them. I wanted to ask you a little bit about coaching different age groups, because that's something that can be very challenging. And a coach may be starting out as a high school coach or a junior coach, but becomes more successful and is then taken up into the adult levels and maybe even into the professional levels. And we've heard on these interviews just how different it can be at those levels. Can you talk a little bit about what your experiences have been working with juniors and also seniors, and some of the differences that you've had to make, the adjustments you've had to make in order to be effective?
Sure. Well, when you look at younger people, and this is something, unfortunately, that I didn't learn until, I think, honestly, probably when I was in Ireland. Here's an example of a practice. Okay. In Ireland, I would have an hour and 15 minutes, and about 30 minutes of it, we'd be playing, because the kids wanted to play. They wanted to play. And every kid wants to play, right? I think so many times coaches forget that. They think, well, I've got to drill. And we do so many drills. And oh, by the way, we've got 10 minutes to practice scrimmage at the end of practice. And then, the kids, I think when you're working with younger kids, you have to make sure it's fun for them. And, I think it should be fun for everyone. My gosh, it's a game. But I think the higher levels you go up, the more serious it gets, the difference in viewpoint of each athlete, because they're like, well, when we were playing in 7th grade, it was completely different than now, where we're playing high school basketball and it's so competitive. And if we don't win this game, we're not going to go to the state tournament or, whatever. I think that, at a lower level, ultimately, it's about fundamentals all the way through. I mean, you have to teach fundamentals as you go up the ladder, period. Working with Steve Lammy at Grove City, we would do the most fundamental drills that I still do with teams when I come to Ireland. And people would say, you do that. Like, we would do the UCLA John Wooden pivot series with our teams every day at Grove City. And I'm sure at times they probably thought, wow, why are we doing this every day? But when you do a lot of things and do them right, then the repetition sets in, and then you're going to do it right on the court. And that's the most important thing. So I think at the younger level, you have to be able to make it fun, and you have to continue to add to the complexity of it as far as the tactical aspects, the technical aspects, and being able to climb that ladder, if you will, to a higher level. I think that that's something that, but ultimately, in order to have players at the higher level, you gotta make it fun for them at the lower level, or what, especially like in Ireland, for instance. Some kids are just going to say, "Man, this isn't any fun. I'm going to go play Gaelic football, or I'm going to go play hurling, or rugby, or soccer, or whatever." I think that I think it's important to be able to focus on understanding where your kids are at their age and being able to reach them there. And I mean, I'm not going to coach a group of sixth and seventh graders or elementary school kids the way I coach a bunch of high school kids. That's nonsense. It doesn't work.
Right.
And I've actually, to be perfectly honest with you, I tried that. And, when I was a younger coach, and I failed miserably at it. So,
well, that's why everybody's watching, so they can learn not what to do sometimes. Right? If you look at coaching in general, across what you've seen, your experiences, the experiences of the coaches you've worked with, what are some of the challenges that you think are most prominent in today's society for coaches?
I think technology with social media is a big factor, big problem, I think.
Can you expand? What do you mean by that? Do you mean coaches using it or not using it?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, my apologies. Yeah, kids. I think that a lot of times kids, like, I think being able, and a lot of times people think that kids have changed. No, kids haven't changed. They're the same. The biggest thing is their stimulus, or they're stimulated by. I think that they have more things that they can do now. Like when I was growing up, sports in my small town of Robertsdale, Alabama, I mean, that was what we did, because, we didn't have social media and we didn't have a whole lot to do in town. Now there's so many options for kids, and things that take the attention away from perhaps being involved in sports. In fact, they can play sports on a video game. So I think that that's one of the big challenges with coaching these days. I think also the big thing is, I think management of constituents around your program is a big challenge with coaches. We have heard so much in the United States about helicopter parenting and now what's known as bulldozer parenting. Those are big challenges, not only for an elementary school coach or a teacher or a middle school or high school coach. The college coaches are even dealing with it now. So I think that those are big factors and challenges with coaches now that are challenges. What else? I guess probably the biggest thing is that the win at all cost model is seeping into all the way down into lower levels, where kids should be learning to play and learning the fundamentals before. Yes, you want to win. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a person that doesn't want to win. But I think that it's more important that people learn how to play the game and how to understand the rules, as opposed to just winning a game because, it's that's your only important thing. I think that coaches have to, I think this day and age, coaches need to be more prepared, I believe, to be able to handle all those different aspects, because there's so much that's changed since when I even got into coaching all those years ago, and big challenges.
You mentioned that kind of win at all costs and creeping into the youth programs. I agree with you completely. Yet then you talked a little bit about AAU basketball and how things are transitioning into a club model, and those club models are heavily influenced by sponsors, by boosters, and they're very expensive. Coaches' salaries are dependent on their success record. Right. It's a very fine line to walk between, this idea of fun and development versus, if I don't perform well as a coach, I don't have a job.
Yeah, well, I agree with you're right, but I think if we're looking at statistics, okay, we're talking about evidence-based information,
sure,
or statistics. Seniors in the United States that play high school basketball, it's like 2.5% of all seniors play college basketball in the NCAA when they're finished. So we have to do our part to prepare. Now, I understand AU teams have their sponsorships and things, and maybe most players that play for those organizations that have sponsorships are going to more than likely end up matriculating to colleges and getting scholarships, but not every kid. I mean, 2.5%. So it's a very small number that even played Division III NCAA basketball. We're not even talking about the other divisions of NAIA and National Junior College Athletic Association or U.S. Small College Athletic Association or, or National Christian College Athletic Association. So the percentages are low. So I think that if we can look at it from that perspective and think about what are these people going to be doing? What are these young people going to be doing for the rest of their lives? I mean, hopefully they'll be able to play basketball. I play Masters basketball, have a team called Vintage Basketball Club that we play in Ireland every year, and played this past November and with a bunch of really old guys. And to be able to play and love the game, that's amazing. I think that's so important. I think when we get to a point where it becomes so serious, it leads kids away. It just does. I mean, if you look at the low numbers, I mean, the sport in general is not dying, but in certain sports are becoming less in terms of percentages of kids. Like football across the United States is dropping participation numbers. So we have to be able to focus on the why. Why are we coaching? Why are we doing what we do? Ultimately, we're doing it because we want to help young people learn valuable skills that are going to impact their lives for the rest of their life through the sport we're coaching. And so I know it's a long-winded answer, but I think that when we look at the numbers, getting a scholarship here in the United States, man, it's almost a miracle for some.
Yeah, but it's a question I think has to be asked because there is that kind of pressure to be successful, and it not only in club sports but also in high school sports as well, where coaches may be hired on a stipend as a teacher, but the expectation is still there that you produce quality, successful teams in a win-loss column, and so I think there's a lesson there for athletic directors to look at the why of why are you hiring these coaches and what are your outcomes at the end of a season. How do you evaluate that coach? Do you just evaluate them on their success on a track or field or court? Last question then, if you have advice for coaches who are maybe entry-level coaches or looking to progress, improve as coaches, what would you suggest to them?
Oh man, well, the big thing I would suggest is be willing to sacrifice. There are a lot of people like myself and a lot of people in Ireland that have coached for 20, 25 years that barely have ever gotten paid. And I've done a lot of times in my career where I work for free. I'm fortunate that I did those things because I did those things, I was able to get to the place. And by the way, I haven't reached where I want to get to. I want to continue to grow. Even at my age, I don't think that that has to ever end, and I don't ever want it to end. But I think any coach that's young needs to really go out, find a mentor that they can learn from, someone that has done it for a while, someone that they can gain knowledge about the sport that they're going to coach, but also understand what kind of example that person's going to be. If they're married, what kind of husband they are, what kind of dad they are, if they're a parent, how they treat their players, how they work with everyone around them. Being able to find a mentor like that, like a Bill Elder was for me, or a Harry Sheehy was for me, or Steve Lammy, or Kieran Murphy. Those people helped me be able to. They provide an example that has helped me be able to climb the ladder to coach at various levels. I also think too that don't try to be who you are. A lot of times young coaches try to become someone else. Mm-hmm. And, each one of us have personalities that are specific to who we are and how we've been brought up. I would encourage any coach to take the Myers-Briggs, just to find out what their personality type is, and be who you are. Be true to yourself. Don't try to be someone else. Because, you can take something from every different person that you learned from. If you want to take some stuff from me today, great. That'd be awesome. I would really feel happy about that. but you have to take all the different things and bring it all together, and that becomes kind of who you are. But always be true to yourself. I think those are just a few of the valuable things that they should do.
Mm. Well, Tim, thank you so much for joining me and discussing a variety of topics. And if somebody wants to follow up with you with a question or learn a little bit more about what you're doing, what's the best way for them to do that?
Oh, you can reach out to me at my email. Well, I have a web page for my consulting organization, Basketball Mentoring, at www.basketballmentoring.com. It's it's under construction right now, but my personal email is drtimrice@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'd love to answer any questions that you may have. My goal is to hold the ladder for others to climb to great success. Whether I'm thanked or not, it really doesn't matter. The most important thing is that I'm able to help others be able to really live the dream, man. I mean, think about, like, for me, I'm a kid from South Alabama. I grew up poor, and to be able to travel all over the United States and to travel to Europe and, work with different organizations over there, I just feel very, very blessed to have had that opportunity.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And just a reminder, Thursday, same time, 11 a.m. Eastern, we'll be talking to Nathaniel Lucas, who is a strength and conditioning coach for international and professional basketball. He resides in England. So we're staying over in European context this week and also staying in basketball. So I hope you would join us for that 11 a.m. Eastern. But on behalf of myself, Tim Baghurst, and of course, Tim Rice, thank you so much for watching.